Good morning. Welcome to the Science of Mind class here at CSLDallas. I'm Dr. Petra, and I hope you had a fabulous Thanksgiving. And wherever you are in the world, I know that not everybody celebrates Thanksgiving, but we do celebrate with a ridiculous amount of food here. Here in the U.S., and it is truly joy-filled. We had a fabulous, lovely Thanksgiving potluck here, and I hope you were able to catch the celebration to celebrate all that we have to be grateful for. And not, like Christmas isn't just for a single day. Thanksgiving isn't just for a single day either. Letting our gratitude spill over is so lovely. All right, and so we are continuing on this fabulous little subchapter in Spirit on Metaphysics and Physics. And we ended the reading and we started the conversation last week on not only can we set a new cause in motion, but that the truth known is demonstrated. And so this is a powerful thought. The truth known is demonstrated. And I want to look at what he says about what does it mean to know the truth so that it will be demonstrated. Because we had a fabulous question that I think Marjorie asked last week about the idea of knowing, gnosis, right? And what constitutes actually knowing something. And so here we go. The knowledge of truth and its demonstration is both simultaneous and instantaneous. Since we are dealing with that which is limitless, knowing no big and no little, the possibility of our demonstration rests not in the principle. Doesn't rest in the law of cause and effect, this principle of life, but in our acknowledgement of and embodiment in it of the idea we desire experienced. So knowledge constitutes acknowledgement of this limitless principle and the embodiment of the truth. Or maybe actually it's the acknowledgement of the truth, because it's truth that is known, is demonstrated. So what are we acknowledging? One, the truth, and two, our embodiment of it. Super important. The saying of peace, or the thinking, we could say, the saying of peace will not produce peace unless back of the word is a realization of the meaning of peace. So in the simplicity of our own language, we try to convince ourselves of the reality of that for which we are doing our spiritual mind treatment, knowing that in such degree as we have an embodiment of the idea, it is thrown into a mechanical field and must operate. So the point isn't to turn on the law or to convince the principle that we deserve or can have or should have the thing that we are doing our spiritual work about. The point isn't to fill the gap between the infinite and us. The point is to convince ourselves of the reality of that which we are treating. And what does that mean? To convince ourselves is to move into that place where we believe it to be true, that this is a truth, that universe is abundant. Spirit is present and always knows what to do as me. Life is always for life, right? These are the spiritual truths that we purport to know. But it's not enough to just have the idea of it. We have to work to embody it. And our spiritual work, our spiritual mind treatment, our vision boards, our affirmations, right? They're all designed to induce embodiment of the idea. a felt, so I don't like to use the word known. I don't like to use the word believe, because both of those have a lot of connotation, and then we can arm wrestle over the semantics. What I like to use is the word embodiment and acceptance, which to me is a felt lived experience in my own consciousness. And when it becomes a felt lived experience within me, when I say, oh, right, that's actually the truth. That's when I've known the truth, and then it's put into a mechanical field. The mechanical field, the principle can't ask, are you sure? It can't ask, do you really want that? It can't ask, wait a minute, what about what you asked for yesterday? It can't respond and say, well, you weren't very nice yesterday, so I don't think you deserve it. It's a mechanical field. It's a mechanical principle, an automatic response to truth known. And so our constant work, and why one of our spiritual practices is sacred study, why we do this, why we think about what do we know or what can we imagine is the truth about the universal principles and the nature of reality, is so that when we get to this point, there's an acceptance within us that we are in fact speaking truth. And we're continually releasing the patterns of thinking that come from our human experience, our biology, the millennium of history that we're all a part of. And we're moving into that place where we embody the fact that we are actually spiritual beings, and we are expressing in this particular form at this particular time. So I really love that in this particular paragraph, we're using the word embodiment. So I want to get us away from over and over and over and over and over again the nonsense that what we're doing is purely cerebral. It's not just that we have to think a thought, but what our conscious mind does is it starts to direct our focus. That's what our conscious mind does. Are we focusing on what's not working? Are we focusing on what makes us unhappy? Are we focusing on the old thoughts, or are we focusing on truth? And the more that we focus on truth and work with it, what would it be like if this were true? How can I see it actually demonstrated already? All the ways in which we work with this truth with a capital T, the more we can work in our spiritual treatments and our spiritual work to the embodiment. Well, if that's true, then it must be true for me. It must be true in my own life. It can't not be true, because truth is everywhere, right? It's part of the one that is everywhere. And so this idea, and that we are convincing ourselves of the reality. Spirit doesn't need to be convinced, it already is. The law doesn't need to be convinced, it's just going to say yes to whatever. And what we often do is when it doesn't work out, we say, well, Spirit must not have wanted us to have it. I suppose there must be something else I should be doing. And all of these things throw the power back outside of us. We have to accept that there's an embodiment process that we are working with. And it is our embodiment, and it's the conviction that we're using to move ourselves out of our limited human thinking into a broader spiritual acceptance of truth. Now, how that truth is going to demonstrate in our lives is actually going to be individuated. It is actually going to be shaped by the uniqueness of who we are, by our biology, by our backgrounds, by our history, by our innate talents, by the things we like and don't like. Right? It's going to move as us in the world through our filters and our innate, the way that we have come into being in this particular form, in this particular time, in this particular moment of the expansion of the universe. And so it will be individualized, which is part of what's necessary. Right? And it's going to be cool because it's going to be ours. And so it'll have all kinds of interesting shapes and definitions. And may not be perfect, right? But the more that we can embody the truth, the more fully, rather than perfectly, I think the more fully it can be expressed. The more wholly it can be expressed in our experience. And the more that we express it, of course, then the more we experience it. So he's really diving in here on helping us understand what we are doing. Now, the point, of course, is that this is happening all the time. We're already embodying things. We embody the fact that you have to work hard to get ahead. We embody that the universe maybe isn't as safe as as safe as other people say it is. We are already embodying that that the trauma is now making a difference, has always made a difference in our life. These are all things that we embody. And our job is to work on embodying new things, work on embodying things that are part of the spiritual truth, that not just our human experience. Of course, we're never going to get away from how that impacts us. That's not true. I don't want to say that statement. That's not true. The impact that it has lessens and lessens and lessens, but it is part of what makes us who we are, right? So it's part of the filtration system through which the light comes through us as us and shines into the world. So so I love this next piece. Spirit is the power that knows itself. Whatever that power within us is that knows itself constitutes the part of us which is spirit or spiritual. Right? That aspect of being able to know itself, know ourselves as truth revealing, as individualized expressions. To be self-conscious is to be a spiritual entity. Mind in its self-conscious form cannot be differentiated from spirit. So consciousness, right? We're constantly recognizing that when he uses the word mind, what we're using today to represent the same thing is the word consciousness. Consciousness in its self-conscious form cannot be differentiated from spirit. Consciousness in its subjective or subconscious state is the law of spirit, the automatic doer. We are a spirit while God is the spirit. We as people, humanity, humans, are an individual. A human being is an individual while God is the universal. But since the individual comes from and is in the universal, it follows that a human being is a little world within themselves. Right? That's why we understand that we are co-creating. We're not creating the macrocosm, but we're co-creating in our own little world through those things, truths that we embody. And that is the spiritual nature of who we are, the causal reality that we're a part of, that we are in our own lives, using the law, which is the subjective or subconscious state. No limit can be placed upon the spirit of a human being. It merges with the universal spirit, for the two are really one. God is in us as we are in God, the same essence, the degree apparently different. The one finite, the other infinite, and since the infinite cannot come from the finite, it follows that the finite must come from the infinite. Which is why we can understand and use these principles. And our work is to understand them and use them consciously, because the truth is we're using them all the time, just like we're using gravity all the time. Yeah. Right? I don't really get how gravity works. I've read the definition, you know what I mean? But I don't really get how it works. I do understand that in space, the bigger the thing is, the more gravity it has, the more it pulls the smaller thing in. Okay, kind of get that part. And I know that enough that I could actually use that were I to become a rocket scientist or a physicist. I don't necessarily understand, right? It's one of the four main forces, and it's all very, very interesting and confusing. But we can discover and use these things. We're using them whether we know it or not. All we're trying to do is to bring what's already going on to give it some language so that we can more consciously use it. All right, so let's stop there. Let's stop there and talk about this idea that truth known is demonstrated, and that the way that we know truth is to embody it. And how does that look and feel to you? And what stands in the way of you being able to embody truth? So, Joseph, we're going to say good morning. Joseph is sitting there manning the helm over there. Say good morning to you.
Good morning, everybody. How are you doing? Hopefully you enjoyed your time with your loved ones and family. Thank you for joining us today, wherever you are. If you're in the room, there's a couple of ways you can participate in this conversation. You can simply raise your hand, and myself or Richard will hand you a microphone. Mm-hmm. And if you're joining us on Zoom, you can simply tap the raise your hand icon, and I'll ask you to unmute your mic and join the conversation. For all you guys on Facebook, just simply type your questions or comments within the chat, and without further ado, jump in.
Jump in. Who has a comment or a question or a thought that wants to be shared?
Hi, I'm Nicole.
Hi, Nicole.
This is really fun. So I've been spending the last 2 years with Science of Mind just working on this one principle that you're talking about right now, that truth known can manifest itself, and that we can kind of take a little bit of control of that manifestation, and by knowing the truth of what we can access, it will present itself to us, because we're not standing in our own way anymore, looking elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And so there was a truth I knew. Recently, I interacted with a person, and the interaction was pretty minimal. And the truth in me that I knew was that we have a lot in common. And this person knows that on a subconscious level. They gotta, because this is the truth. So how do I bring this out into the open? And this was in the back of my mind all week long, and I'm doing the manifestation work. I'm thinking about it. I'm feeling it. Like, I'm gonna connect with this person somehow. I'm gonna bring this out of the subconscious. All right. They walk into this room today, and would you know we're dressed the exact same way, head to toe. We're wearing all the same stuff. And I love it, because I got up in the morning and I thought, I didn't put my outfit together the night before or anything. The first thing I grabbed, I'm letting my subconscious act, and I'm letting that truth manifest itself through me, and then I show up, and that thing that I've been thinking all week, that desire for some sign of similarity, commonality, connection, and then the most obvious possible sign presents itself. We're dressed the same way. And I love it. I love it.
Right? And so the truth known is we are connected. We're absolutely connected. And here it is, representing itself outwardly.
It's really cool.
I love that. Thanks, Nicole. That's awesome. It's always interesting to see the ways in which it presents itself and how we can see it, right? Or how we can also then forget that we are not paying attention to it. And so sometimes when I'm working with people, and sometimes when I'm working with myself, right? It's like, okay, go back to the basics. Are you just responding or not even reacting, but just, sometimes I'm so focused on allowing things to be what they are and feeling my feelings about it that I forget to embody the truth. I forget to embody the truth, that I'm a capable human being, that I'm spirit showing up, that I know something, that spirit as me knows something, that actually just simply letting it be just continues to have more of that, which is great. Can let it be and have the feelings about it, but if it's not actually what I want to be experiencing at some point, right, I have to know a new truth. Or actually, what I always find out, what I always realize is that I have to go back to truth with a capital T, that there is power, that there is peace, that there is joy or abundance or whatever it is, that I have to go back and I have to embody that, and not just embody, oh, this is what's happening. doesn't deny what's happening. Do you see? It doesn't deny it. We absolutely do have to accept this is what is in the moment. But the question is always, well, how is this going to continue to unfold? And what's my contribution to continuing to unfold it? My contribution is my embodiment of truth. Truth with a capital T. Not my perspective, not what I think is the truth, not what I'm feeling, not from my stories, but really honest to God truth with a capital T. And of course, we spend a lot of time in sacred study trying to understand different ways to language that truth with a capital T for ourselves, right? And there are so many different ways that it can be said. We can use scripture verses from any of the great scriptures of the world. We can use things that we've read in other books. We can use our moments of our own inspiration. We can use moments of our mystical experiences. We can use a line in a song. We can write at all kinds of things, those things that ring as truth with a capital T. And let's stop there for a moment. How do you know the difference between truth with a capital T or my truth? Another very interesting question. How do you know the difference between truth with a capital T, or how would you describe the difference between truth with a capital T and my truth, which is truth with a little t? That was not a rhetorical question. Okay, we've got a Joseph, something online, and then we'll come back here into the room.
Looks like we have a question or a comment from Zoom. Marjorie, could you unmute your mic and join us?
Good morning, Marjorie.
Good morning. This is another topic that just speaks to my soul. I had typed something into the question and answer, so I'm just going to read it.
Okay.
From a spiral dynamics perspective, which, like all perspectives, including science of mind, can only be partially true, how can we understand Ernest Holmes' teachings from a place of holding multiple perspectives simultaneously? How can we be religious scientists from an integrated perspective that would include all perspectives as holding a piece of the truth and not necessarily the capital truth?
It is a great question, right? And the lovely thing about science of mind is that this spiritual path, right? Any spiritual path that does not insist on inclusivity or exclusivity, that we're the only path, automatically has space for other paths, but doesn't necessarily include every path, right? Just because we understand that there are multiple paths, we are also invited to pick a path that works for us and to walk it, not to the exclusion of other paths, right? Everybody has a map. Some maps are topographical maps, some maps are street maps, some maps include buildings, some maps are very detailed, other maps are very broad brushed. And each one of these things that you're talking about, of course, are all different maps. Ultimately, if we were to lay all the maps over top of each other, we might begin to have some sense of this infinite reality, but of course it would require an infinite number of maps, which gets really confusing. And mixing the maps can also be really confusing because every map is actually showing us some different aspect. Now, the challenge here is to say that science of mind has anything to do with the truth, right? And that's where I think the mistake is, that we take anything, we take science of mind or spiral dynamics or anything, and we say it's the truth. So, but what makes something truth with a capital T as opposed to truth with a small t, right? Any particular map or any particular path is going to be truth with a small t. If we take it in its entirety. So what's truth with a capital T? We have a comment in the back of the room here, and then Joseph will come to you. And then we'll have another comment.
I'm Kate. For me, truth with a little t feels really good because I'm right and other people are wrong. And there are bad guys and I have to fight against them. And truth with a big T feels really, really uncomfortable. And for me, that's how I know, oh, I might be wrong here, when I feel
Good.
really good. And then I
Right.
know I have to get more uncomfortable.
They're excellent, because it is. Truth with a capital T pulls us out of our known experience. Yes, and our own personal point of view. Beautiful. Thank you. Joseph, you had your hand up, and then we're going to come back here into the room. There's somebody out there.
Bobby on Zoom, can you unmute your mic and join us?
Hey, Bobby. Jump on in there.
Good morning, Dr. Petra. So truth with a capital T versus my truth with a little t. Truth with a capital T has to apply universally to everyone. And if it's not applicable to everyone in every situation, no compromises, then it's not truth with a capital T.
Thank you, Bobby. I would expand that to everyone and everything all the time. Beautiful. Thanks, Bobby. And we have a comment back here. Patrick, if you want to bring the microphone over here. Hi, Shauna. Good morning.
I'm Shauna. Well, I was going to say two things. So for me, so I'll go back to truth, and then I want to say one other thing. For me, truth is when I am completely centered in this knowing of love. And that's just all encompassing for me, right? That for me, truth is as close as I can get to the absence of fear. And it's just seeing things through a lens of love, which is usually much larger than me. It's a knowing. And, I've had that in my life. And for me, that's sort of the same feeling that I have when I'm in that place of embodiment and acceptance. It's like love and this like deep peacefulness that's beyond me. It's like stepping into something. And I know what that feels like when it happens. And I know I'm in a place of embodiment and acceptance. The mystery to me is why I can't be there in other places of my life that I want to be.
Right.
And I guess for me, that's sort of my personal map. I've had that feeling in my life, and I know when I'm there. And so I also know when I'm not.
Right.
And getting back there, for me, is always sort of the journey.
Yeah.
And then the mystery is, why can't I be there all the time? So.
I love that. Thank you, Shauna. So I would invite us to think about, Shauna, that what you have shared with us is a truth, not the truth. So I think the problem is we think there is the truth, which is singular. So, and what you shared with us, to me, is an experience that you have of the truth, right? So love might be a part of truth with a capital T. That there is an aspect of love that when we are embodying it and experiencing it, it shifts our experience of the world. But I would submit to you, it's not the only thing that shifts our experience of the world. And it might be part of the reason why it's challenging always to come back to a truth is because we think there's only one of them. Or we hone in on one that works for us. And truth can't be singular if we're talking about an infinite universal reality. So there are many ways in which we can describe this infinite that we are looking to get a hold of in some way that we might call truth with the capital T. And of course, we'll all experience it differently, and we'll all pull the different aspects of the truth that that resonate with us in specific, right? So I want to go back to Bobby's definition of truth. That one of the fundamental things about truth with a capital T is that it must be universal. It must be universalized. It must be able to be universalized. It must be true in all situations for all people and all beings everywhere. So it can't actually have anything to do with us, which is actually very difficult for us to do, is to imagine talking about things without including ourselves. So for example, one of my favorite truths with a capital T, I think of this as a truth with a capital T. Principle is not bound by precedent. It comes straight out of Thomas Troward. I love the way he says that. Principle is not bound by precedent. If that were not a truth, nothing new could ever be created. The law would always be bound by whatever had been done before. So we would not have invented LED lights, because principle would be bound by the fact that the first person who created lights created the incandescent bulb. And if principle is bound by precedent, no new kind of light would ever be able to be created. So do you see, in application, I can see that this is a principle. And this would be true, universally applied. So evolution is an opportunity to look at principle is not bound by precedent. Catastrophes and the way that things evolve out of or come to being out of catastrophes shows me that principle is not bound by precedent. It's applicable in the sciences. It's applicable in biology. It's applicable to human beings. If principle were bound by precedent, you would never move. You would never change jobs. You would never fall out of love and fall into love with someone else. So it's universally applied. Principles and this truth with a capital T is universally applied. Now, are we going to name every possible truth? Probably not, because it's infinite. Are we going to all use the same language? Like when I first say principle is not bound by precedent, a lot of people go, huh? But it's only because I've read Troward so many times, and I know what those three words mean to me, right? I've studied that enough, and I embody the understanding that something new can always be created. So even though there are times in my life where I feel stuck, I feel like I'm stuck, I don't have any choices, I'm obligated, I have responsibilities, I know beyond the shadow of a doubt that that's actually not true. It's only my truth in the moment that I feel stuck, that I feel unable to make a decision, that I feel like there aren't any other choices. I actually know that is not truth with a capital T. And so I have to feel my feelings, talk to myself about it, and then I have to work to shift my consciousness over to, but wait, principle actually isn't bound by precedent. So what's new, what's available to me in terms of choices, in terms of ways of looking at it, in terms of there's a whole host of things that begin to open up if I'm willing to move to this truth with a capital T. You actually cannot be stuck. If I am an infinite being with an infinite number of choices, and principle is not bound by precedent, is only my limited belief that I don't have a choice. Now, there's a whole boatload of choices I don't actually want to make because I don't want to experience the consequences of those choices. But that's a choice. I say I can't do it. I can, of course. I could do all of those things. I'm completely free to do any of those things. And then I'm using my truth, my filtration system to parse out the choices that I like. Some of the choices are action, some of the choices are perspective, some of the choices are doing spiritual work to change my consciousness about it. Some of the choices just let me have my feelings. And then my choices, could I just get out of my feelings? Could we move on now, please? It's time to move on from that and ask myself, where am I taking this? All of that work, all of it is based on my embodied, felt, lived experience that principle is not bound by precedent. And it's not inevitable. It's not inevitable that history repeats itself. It's not inevitable that because I was traumatized as a child, I'm going to bring that trauma into everything I do. These things are not inevitable. Principle is not bound by precedent. That's a truth. That's a truth, truly, I can't cling to. Sometimes it's my life raft. When I am swimming in a soup of, I have no idea what is going on or how to get through this. That's the truth I cling to. And I know that that truth is true for everybody. It's true for anybody. We always have some choice, even if the choice is to leave the planet because we don't like how awful our life is. Everything becomes available to us when we realize principle is not bound by precedent. So do you see, that's the kind of truth with a capital T, but it's not the only one. It's not, right? And so because it's an infinite reality, the nature of this infinite is infinite. So there are some of the truths that we're getting at are qualities of experience, qualities of life. Some of them are ways in which we describe this mechanical field. There are, and so what we're trying to do is get a hold of the nature of reality. Because if we can get a hold of the nature of reality, we begin to get a hold of what it is that's available to us. Because we are conscious beings, and we are in that nature of reality, right? So just as, what is it here? It says that we have it in our own lives. We're a little world unto ourselves. We're obviously not creating the universe. We're obviously not running and managing the universe, thank God, right? Although some of us try, it's exhausting, I know, from personal experience. Right? And you can, in fact, change the weather, which is sometimes challenging because if we make the rain move from us, it's going to rain on somebody. And so, these are the things that we have to actually ask ourselves about. But we are a little world within ourselves. We are taking responsibility for the fact that we are participating in this. And so, to go back to your comment, Shauna, I don't know. Like Ernest Holmes, this is one of the many places that I totally agree with Ernest Holmes. Not that I agree with everything that he says. I love that he says somewhere along the line, why is not a useful question. Right? Why do I fall off? Why do I forget? Why do I have these experiences? Why aren't I all there all the time? Well, because you are an embodied soul in a finite human space-time continuum, and that's part of what we're dealing with here. Why is not a useful question. The question is always what now? That's always the question. What or how are the questions, not why. Because why becomes we use it to justify, defend, or explain, and we use it to beat ourselves up. Oh God, why am I in this experience? Well, we know exactly why. Because we forgot to stay focused on whatever it is we were wanting to be focused on. Something pulled us off out of our center, and it's not bad. It's part of the human experience. And we're not trying to just be in stasis. It's really okay to be passionately engaged in your life. Anger and joy and sorrow and love and peace and effort. All of this is all part of being an ensouled, embodied being of this in this particular life. But to do all of those things, understanding the nature of reality, to me, changes everything.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Carmen. Hearing you talk, Petra, it made me think about how, like, a situation, any situation, come up, and how you said, like, it's your thoughts of at that moment. How do I look at that situation? And I know, like, a situation I came across of that. I think that that I have like I lost out on something of that situation, and it's how I feel about how I look at it and how I think about it, and it made me think about what you were saying. It's my story. It's my thoughts at that time, and I had to reimagine or recreate those thoughts to where that there's no loss in divine mind.
Right.
And that if it's for me, it's for me. If it's not, it's not. But prior to all that, I used to have that, like, that situations would be like, I lost out, or I'll
Right.
never have that again. And
Right.
but that's my own personal looking at that
Yes.
particular situation.
Right. And so what would be the truth under the change in perspective? What would be the spiritual truth that you've gotten a hold of, even if you haven't given it language, that would allow you to change that perspective? Can anybody help Carmen? What would be the truth? We might say there are unlimited possibilities. Right? Is that not the
bound by precedent?
and not bound by precedent, but we want to make meaning out of it. Well, I lost out because Spirit didn't want me to have it, or it's not what's best for me. And we have the fear it's never going to come again. There's never going to be another opportunity. Wait, how is that possible if we live in an unlimited universe? So what if the story is that opportunity, I didn't take that opportunity? What if we made no meaning out of it? And what if we said, well, we live in an unlimited universe, so therefore there must be other opportunities coming down the pike. And if it feels like it's the right opportunity, I'm more likely to grab hold of it than let it go by. Or if I feel better about myself, I'm more likely to grab a hold of the opportunity, right? So there is lots of personal work we're doing, but we were the ones who let the opportunity go by, or decided, for whatever reasons, good, bad, or indifferent, to let it go by. Now, and so what is the truth with the capital T? There are unlimited possibilities. Again, we are at complete choice. Some of the possibilities that come down the pike, we may not want. We get to choose. Always, over and over and over again, we get to choose. Right? Even in the most limited situations, I mean, this is what Viktor Frankl talked about in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. In the most limited situations, he said, I always have the choice of being in my own mind and the dignity of my own soul. No matter how outwardly limited the outer experience might be, right? We're not talking about unlimited possibilities just as an outer thing. It's unlimited possibilities and as an inner causal reality that we're talking about here, because we're talking about the nature of reality itself. And sometimes it's easy to confuse those two things, but my situation is limited. There's always unlimited choices inside there somewhere that we can find. And so we express it. I love the way that you express that, Carmen. And what we're trying to do here is to tease out what is the spiritual principle that's underlying that shift in consciousness that you made. That shift in consciousness is based on a spiritual truth that you came to know, even if you never gave that spiritual truth language. And so that's what we're trying to do here, is to give it some language and to recognize when we do that, it shifts everything. And it's not just our perspective. It is actually moving us into this place where truth known is demonstrated. So I'm really pushing on our ability to think about these things in a larger context and not just always exclusively within our own experience. And recognizing that this isn't about making one idea more primary than the other or more true. It's really asking ourselves, what can we see in the nature of reality, which is not that different than what can we see through science in the nature of physical reality. Or as Marjorie said, spiral dynamics. That shows us the development of consciousness in terms of worldviews. We look at the development of children when we read Erikson and Piaget. All these things, they're all revealing principles that we can understand and use. The principles are not all identical because the maps aren't identical. But if we use those maps that work for us, we'll patchwork together a way of understanding reality that really speaks to us, right? And that we get to do that. good enough. Science of Mind doesn't say, you have to believe everything I say and you must follow it the way I say it. Thank God, right? Because you're going to take it up however you take it up. My job is to try to parse it out. And of course, it's going to be from the way that I have parsed it out and have learned to live it in my own life. All right. Fabulous stuff. Let's just carry on with the conversation, Metaphysics and Physics, next week. So happy to have you join us. Reminding you that we have a celebration here in a little bit. Dr. Tracy Brown is our speaker this morning, so please do join us in another 25 minutes. We'll love to see you then. Thanks. Bye for now.